Welcome to the Exponential Growth Podcast, where we demystify what it takes to break into tech. I'm your host, James Hudnall, and my goal is to highlight real-life examples of people moving into careers they love, so you can too. Hey everyone, today I'm joined by Khalid Warsame. Now, Khalid used to drive trucks, but today he's a Flutter developer and a content creator. Now we're going to dive in and learn more about him and his transition into tech. Khalid, welcome to the show.
Hey, James, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do today, and then we can dive back in and try to build that back up.
All right. So, hey, everyone. My name is Khalid, and I'm a Flutter mobile app developer. That is a cross-platform framework. I usually like to joke and say, it is similar, to React Native, but a lot better. So there is that. So yeah, I've been doing it for 3 years now, and right now I'm a full-time Flutter developer at a large company.
Nice. No, very cool. And so take us back. Where'd you grow up? What was it like?
Yeah. So it looks like I'm gonna have a different background from your other hosts. So I did grow up in Egypt. So I lived there for almost 12 years, and then migrated to the US back in 2012.
Okay. No, very cool. And I guess to whatever extent you're comfortable, when you were growing up, was technology on your radar as something you might want to do, or did you want to do something different?
Yeah, I've always been a nerd. So, we had a computer at home that, I always kind of took apart, put back together. Uh, I lost count how many times I had to reinstall the Windows, OS for missing few files.
Yeah.
So it was always, I always grew up with that.
Okay. No, very cool. And I think you had said 12 or so is when you came to the States. Is that right?
Yeah, 2012.
Okay. Okay. And then so college. I don't know. Did you go to college? Was that an intentional decision? What was school like for you?
So in here in the US, I went to community college for 2 years, just, did the general classes, and then I had to drop out because I figured out that college wasn't for me.
Really? You want to expand on that maybe?
Yeah. So from immigrant background, everyone has, you have to go to college, get a degree to become successful. So I kind of grew up with that mentality, and I was kind of pushed towards that area. And then the college, the whole thing is just, I don't know how to describe it, but I kind of figured out it wasn't for me. So I was like, I'm just gonna go do something different.
Yeah, no, I totally get that, man. And I don't know if you've heard or not. I know we hadn't talked about it, but I kind of like you. I went to college because it was expected of me. I came from a blue collar family that they had never been to college, but I guess because I was able to, I was supposed to go do that. And I didn't have any intentionality at that point. I started in engineering just because it sounded like a hard thing to do, which is not the criteria you should use to pick a major. And as you might imagine, that did not turn out too well. And yeah, it took me 8 years to get a different degree. And like you, I kind of took myself out of it, eventually went back, but I think that's because I didn't know better, Khalid. I thought I still had to get that college degree, but it sounds like you went down a different path. So when you took yourself out of school, what happened next for you?
So in the immigrant family, if you're not a college educated, you gotta have a job. You gotta have a job that makes good money. So that is the second criteria. And that is what I actually decided to, to just move to Chicago and drive a taxi there, because I was told that, taxi drivers in Chicago made good money. So
Okay.
I did that for a year.
Okay. Cool. I mean, is there anything that sounds like I know that a couple of Uber rides that I've done, I've had amazing conversations with those drivers, and I'm curious that year you were doing that. Did you have any fun conversations that you can share? Anything worth sharing?
Yes, I could write a book. I could make a movie about that 1 year that I spent in Chicago. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So so when back in that was in 2014. I've always been in the States for about 2.5 years, something like that, almost 3 years
Okay.
at that point. And that the taxi driving in a big city like Chicago kind of gave me showed me that the real America, the real
Hmm.
USA. I get to meet too many people from different backgrounds, from different ethnicities, because Chicago is a big, it kind of is a mix. So you get to meet all kinds of people. So it was it was amazing. Not gonna lie, it was great.
Okay. So why'd you move on from that after that year?
Well, I think I think you just mentioned that earlier, Uber. So that kind of killed the business.
Okay, that killed the business. So did you become an Uber driver at that point?
So at the time I tried, I integrated my regular taxi service with an Uber taxi. They had what's called an Uber taxi. It's just an Uber mixed with a taxi. It was a crazy hybrid. So
Okay.
and then I tried doing that for a while. It didn't work out. That is when I transitioned into trucking, and I've been doing it ever since.
Okay. No, very cool. And so let's digress just a little bit because I'm curious. It may be off topic, but maybe the audience cares. I know I do. So going back to that year in Chicago as the taxi driver, I think I know that at least in New York, they've got like this medallion system where you have to buy in to have the medallion. Was the Chicago-based taxi the same thing? Did you have to either buy a medallion or do something along those lines?
Yes. So the thing is, okay, so there are owners that own the medallion. Those medallions were expensive. I heard somewhere around $200,000.
Oof.
But once Uber came, everyone was able to just drive Uber in their own Toyota Camry and Corollas. The value of a medallion dropped so bad, man.
That
I
makes
feel
sense.
sorry for those for the owners there. But in my case, I would go to a taxi company, rent a taxi for a week. So the lease was for 7 days, I think. So you pay a certain amount, you get the taxi for 7 days. They give you a whole contract agreement, and then you do your thing. You pay the fee, the leasing fee, and then you renew every other week.
Okay. No, very cool. I'll stop going down that rabbit hole, even though I'm very interested. But I will ask. So again, during that year or shortly thereafter, before you get into the trucking, you had mentioned you've always been a nerd. Did you have any designs on a career in tech, or did you maybe not know what that looked like at that point?
Not at that point. No,
Okay.
no.
Okay.
At that point, all I cared about is basically just make something out of yourself. Just try to become a useful member of society. I was 21 at the time, so when you're at that age, you don't really know what to do because
Yep.
you just dropped out of college and you don't know what career you want to go to, so you kind of was a lost area. I was lost at that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. No, man, I was lost too, and I was lost long after 21. I was definitely not a productive member of society. So no, I feel you there. So you move on to the trucking, and so I definitely want to dive into this because that's how I learned about you. I think somebody from LinkedIn pointed me to the post that you made where you basically went from being a truck driver to being a Flutter developer, and that's the I guess that's the at the high level what I think I know about you, but I really want to dive in here. So when you went from the taxi driver to like the hybrid Uber driver to the truck driving, was it a decision just because you'd been driving, you were going to drive at maybe a bigger scale with maybe more money, or what was the decision behind that?
What you just mentioned, so it basically was about more money. So
Okay, about the
I
money.
was uh, I was 22 when I transitioned into trucking. I got my license and everything, my CDL license from Chicago. From I went to school there, so I went to drive for Swift Transportation. That is the largest carrier. I mean, largest trucking company in North America.
Okay.
So I worked there for a year and then transitioned over.
Okay, I got a bunch of questions there. First one is, did you have a girlfriend, wife, kids, anything at that time, or were you just on the road doing your thing,
I was just winging it all by myself.
doing your thing? What was the shift like? Because I've heard stories, but I want to hear it from the man himself.
What kind of shift?
I guess so. How many hours a day? How many days a week? How many, yeah, weeks out of the month or out of the year, on average?
Yeah. So hmm, I was working 7 days. So in a trucking, you live in the truck. So
Hmm.
you live in the truck, you deliver a load, you stay at the truck stop, rest areas, different parts. So I wasn't home. Sometimes I was gone actually for 2 3 months straight, just driving, from one city to the next and just delivering loads. And then I would come home, maybe stay for 3 4 or 5 days, maybe just to get few things done, few errands. Maybe if I wanted, if I got a doctor's appointment or something like that, I then go back to the trucking.
Okay, no, cool, man. Because when I worked on the boat, it was somewhat similar, where you would be or I would be out for I think my first hitch is what we called it was 110 days out on the boat, just because at that point, kind of like you, like I didn't have a crystal clear goal, but I knew that to move up, I had to basically put in the time on the boat in the water. So yeah, we would sleep off watch. We'd work 12 hours a day. It was 6 on, 6 off, 6 on, 6 off, which sounds horrible, and I guess kind of was, but you also kind of get used to it. One of those is like a full blown sleep. The other one you take a nap, and I guess you just fall in line and do it. So you had mentioned you were sleeping in the trucks, and I'm curious about this as well because I've never talked to somebody like yourself in that regard. So I think I've seen some of the trucks where they've got like a bunk up top. Is that what you would do? Like even at the truck stops, you would just stop the truck there and bunk for the night?
Yes, exactly
Okay.
that. So, and my truck had to double, like a double bunk, one at the bottom, one at the top. So,
Okay.
and so a lot of people, so the truck, the tractor, with the sleeper, with the sleeper bed, they might look small, but once you go inside, they're actually big.
Okay.
Not like an apartment, but
Yeah.
it's kind of comfy. You can, you have a bed, you have all kinds of drawers on both sides, so it is a lot comfy than what you think.
Nice. Cool. And was it always you alone, call it, or did you ever have like a co-driver where you would do a longer shift or something like that?
I only did that when I was training.
Okay.
So I went out with another gentleman that had 22 years of experience.
Okay.
He kind of showed me everything, showed me the ropes, just to be kind of a lot. Be honest with you, he was older. He kind of gave me a lot of life lessons.
Yeah.
A lot of things to be careful about. So I'm
Oh yeah.
really grateful for that.
Yeah.
And he showed me a lot. So after that, I've always been on my own because the idea of taking a nap while someone else is driving a little bit terrified me always.
Yeah. No, I get that, but and you bring up a good point there, Khalid. With you didn't call it mentoring, but I kind of hear that, and I know looking back at my own when I was in that boat and then the fleet management position, I also had a mentor that taught me a lot about a whole lot more than just boats. It was like life in general, to your point. And looking back, even though you wouldn't think that those skills would translate into tech or to other fields, they absolutely have for me, and I'm sure they have for you as well.
Yeah, yeah. Mentoring. I don't think it was called mentoring, but that is exactly what it is. To be honest
Yeah.
with you,
Yeah.
you hit that. You hit it right. So it definitely was mentoring because I wasn't just learning how to drive a truck, how to drive a manual, but I was learning, how to deal with, let's say, road rage, how
Mm.
to deal with the shippers, how to deal with, with deliveries, how to kind of schedule, deliveries and deal with. It's just too many things that come up, when you're driving truck. It is not just about mainly, yes, mainly you're driving on the open road, but there are a lot of other edge cases that come in, that you need to handle, that you need someone else to basically show you, especially when it comes to reading maps,
Mm.
because so that's something you will do. There are trucking GPSs, but you will also be aware of low bridges,
Mm.
driving up a mountains, and how to use, how to not burn out the brakes on your truck. So it
Mm.
is a lot of things that goes into that.
Yeah, no, that sounds really intense, and I wanted to ask you. So I used to joke where I would joke with my wife and family that I was a part-time truck driver because sometimes in my last life I would have to drive like 8 hours down to a different state in a pickup truck, not a flatbed, and then 8 hours back home at the end of the week. But in your case, I can't. I've driven alongside big rigs like that. I can't imagine driving those and the responsibility that you must feel. And to your point, when drivers are cutting you off or trying to, weave in and out. So, are there any interesting stories in there that are worth sharing?
There's one road rage incident. So the thing is, you have to have the mentality that this person, they could be dealing with whatever things they got going on in their life.
Yeah.
You don't know what they're on,
Yep.
and the last thing you want to do is have, all you're gonna do. Okay, so with most cars, you can have about 10-20 second interaction with every other car on the road. So you don't want to extend that 10 second to a minute. That can ruin your life.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
always gotta be defensive. It doesn't matter if you're in the right or the wrong. So whatever happens, always be in the defensive, because this is just 1 minute interaction, and you're not gonna see this person, ever again. So you
Yeah.
always keep that in the back of your mind. Always be in defense.
Yeah. Is that something that gentleman taught you in the mentoring ship, or is that it is?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Exact.
No, that's cool, man. And I can see how that also translates. I feel like again, just to hit the nail again. I feel like anything like that that you go through, I feel like it'll lend itself to future gigs, even if they're unrelated to that. So I think it's really cool that you got that experience there. So you're driving trucks, you're having fun, maybe you're not, but you're on the grind. Is the goal here? Maybe at this point you feel like you're being a productive member of society, or are you just like making money? Do you have any end goal with this in mind at this point?
Yeah, so making money and being a productive member of society, they kind of go they
Yeah.
kind of go hand in hand. So I'd like to believe I was doing both, to be
Okay.
honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so at that time, my next goal was to basically work for Swift Transportation for 1 year, gain as many, as much experience as I can, and then buy my own truck, start my own authority, my own company, and go from there. So that was the goal.
Okay. That's the goal. And now what actually played out?
Exactly that. So
That's what you did.
I yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I'm glad that worked out well. A
Yeah.
lot better than I expected. But that is what happened. So, and
Okay.
I've I bought my own truck and lease a trailer, and I've been doing that until 2020. So
Man,
it was great.
I want to dive into that a little bit. I understand this is a tech show, but I'm still very curious, and there could be other truck drivers that listen to this episode, and they'll appreciate this as well. So, you've gone from what I guess me not knowing better. It's almost like the rental model where you're driving someone else's truck, and now you've got that ownership, and you purchase the truck, and you're doing your thing. Where I imagine, just like in business, there's more upside, but there's also a lot more risks. Like if you blow an engine or something like that, it's on you to fix it. So what was that like from like your mental framework shifting over to that? How did it go?
So that actually there wasn't big of a difference because I'm always, personally, I'm business minded. So the personally, I feel comfortable when I have my own business, running my own show. Then being an employee is just me and my boss. He didn't hear that. Okay,
Yeah, you
so
shouldn't.
so I always had that. I always had that in mind. So but as you said, so when with the Swift, I was an employee. Actually, it wasn't rental, so I was a W-2
Okay.
employee, just getting paid by the mile. So it's there's a different pay scale, pay system that the trucking uses, and I was getting paid by the mile. So after that, I got my own truck, and as you said, you have to have basically you have to be ready to take care of anything that comes up. That can be blowing a tire, blowing an engine,
Yeah.
blowing a trailer. So it is just too many things that could go wrong.
Yeah.
But again, the upside is a lot better because right now I was actually in direct contact with brokers, negotiating with them on different loads, and try to always get the best rate for the
Sure.
load and all that. Everything that the brokers paid me, it would go towards me, and then I would have to pay my business expenses. Fuel was number one, and insurance, and then the payments and all the maintenance that goes along with it, and then pocket the rest.
Okay. And I think you mentioned you did this until 2020, and now before 2020, while you're in the middle of this, when you've bought your own truck, did you have like what was the next step? What was the next plan? Like the 5 or the 10 year plan?
So the 5 year plan was to actually basically make as much money as I can, and then save up. Maybe start into other businesses, get into another business. Maybe there are a few things that didn't really go well. So right now you might think everything was just actually everything was smooth right until that point. Everything fell apart after that. So,
Really? No,
yeah.
you got me on the edge of my seat now. So what happened? What went wrong?
So a few things, few businesses that I looked at kind of failed, and also I was making decent money, but I was also spending a lot because I was 23, 24, making over six figures. So at that age, with that kind of body, you just blow it out. So
Yeah.
that was one of the regrets that I have, actually. And also, aside from that, I got into the crypto back in 2017, lost a lot in that as well. And I also tried to start another business that failed.
Okay.
So this is too many things that didn't go right. But as long as I had my job, my truck, and everything was going smooth, I could actually, stay afloat, just keep trying until something else, until I hit a maybe well, what do you call it? Until I had what? Until I strike gold, I think
Yeah,
that's what I was looking for.
yeah,
Yeah, but that didn't happen. So at that time, and with all that going on, I was kind of getting tired. So I got married in the 18, and that kind of gives you, now you have something in the back of your mind. Okay, this lifestyle, yeah, it's not for me, and too many things that kind of came together at that time, and I started feeling the pressure and a little bit of a stress from especially from the trucking lifestyle, always being on the road, even though I try to be home as many days as I can, as many weeks as I can. So, but at the end of it, I started to see a lot of videos on YouTube about, self-taught developers, especially these success stories. And I spent 2 years watching those people who went from a totally non-technical background into being a full-time software engineers. And I spent 2 years watching those videos, brainwashing myself that it is doable. Because
mm,
if I'm being honest with you, I didn't believe that I could do it. I
yeah,
didn't believe that it was doable.
yeah.
But yeah, I think I kind of brainwashed myself into believing it until I took the first step towards that.
Yeah, man, there's a lot to unpack there. And before we get to the programming bit, I want to go back to these businesses that you were experimenting with and trying to, or I guess you were creating them. And I guess none of them, you didn't strike gold, as you said, but I can all but guarantee that you learned something from each and every one of them that helped inform the next one or the next thing that you did. So, do you want to talk about any of those businesses and anything that maybe you learned along the way? Anything worth sharing?
Yeah, I won't go into details with those, but what I learned a lot about basically
Mm,
risk management, and being 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 on the same page with anyone that you work in your life. You want to, if you want to work with your let's say your cousin, your uncle, or brother, or some stranger. You always want to be 100% on the same page with that person. Both of you have the same vision, and just to make sure you don't run into problems. So
yeah.
I think I'll just say that.
Okay.
But other than that, I've also learned about management. So basically, running a business, starting incorporating and making sure everything is running smooth. So I learned a lot about managerial, what do you call it, managerial skills.
Hmm.
How to manage stuff. So yeah, I think that was a pretty solid experience, to be honest.
Yeah, no, all those skills translate, I think, to anything that you do in life. So I'm sure those were invaluable takeaways. And again, I heard you mention, so you're making six figures at what I would still call an extremely young age at that point. And even though you got married in 2018, I mean, to a lot of people out there listening right now, they hear six figures and they're like, man, that's the dream right there. So I think I understand the lifestyle issue for you because I experienced the exact same thing when I was on the boat for like 6, 7, 8 months out of the year. I realized that wasn't a sustainable path for me, which is a large part of why I got out of that. And it sounds like maybe that was something that you went through as well. So was that the biggest, I guess, determining factor as to why you got out of that and eventually made this transition?
Exactly, exactly. I think that was the number one reason why I wanted to, just quit truck and do something else.
Yeah.
And in the transition, so my main plan, my main goal was basically quit doing over the road and start doing either regional, where you're home maybe 3 4 nights of the week and you're out maybe for 1 or 2, or do local where you're always home but you drive in the city.
Mm,
At that time I was very familiar with the Twin Cities in Minneapolis, St. Paul. I kind of knew most of the roads, most of the warehouses. So I was kind of very familiar with the city, and driving locally in the city wasn't going to be a problem for me. So
okay.
I decided, that was also one of the things that I wanted to work towards. But yeah, mainly the lifestyle, it was too much. And especially that my wife got pregnant and we were kind of expecting our first child. So that is a major life event that you don't want to miss.
No, that's 100% correct. I remember when, yeah, my wife got pregnant and I quit my job, Khalid, and then transitioned into tech, which is, I'm glossing over a lot of the details there, but it's
Mhm.
certainly an event unlike any other. I totally agree with that. So I guess maybe at the highest level, you decide that the truck driving is not for you, but you own that truck. So was it easy to sell it, assuming that you did, and to pivot?
No,
No.
No. Yeah, the short answer is no. It was it was a headache. So the transition. So I had my plan for transition was basically 2 years. Spend 2 years, kind of slowly get rid of the truck,
Okay.
slowly work less hours, slowly spend more days at home learning to code. With you watching YouTube and Udemy courses and all of that, all while also maintaining the same lifestyle because I figured out, it was doable. You can maintain the same lifestyle with only working maybe 1 week on, 1 week off. So, excuse me. So something like that was doable, but it didn't. So 2020 hit. Everything went out of whack. In 2019, that was the worst. So in the trucking industry, the 2019 was a very bad year.
Hmm.
It was a
Why?
very bad year to be in trucking.
Why is that? Was there anything in particular? I'm trying to think back to that. I remember everything seemed to crash short term in 2020, but then I thought like all of like the truck driving type professions really took off there, but maybe I'm wrong about that. So what was it about 2019 that was tough?
You're right. Actually, 2020, when with the lockdown, I was still driving. I was still driving trucks in the early few months of 2020, and business was good. I gotta lie.
Yeah.
Especially you're driving through Columbus, Ohio, 5 p.m., no traffic, clean.
Mm,
So
yeah.
that was one of the upsides of driving trucks. There was no major construction going on. There's no major accident that kind of closes the highway for 7 hours. We haven't seen any of that.
Yeah.
So it was from that part, it was good. But also the 2019, to be honest with you, I don't really know what went wrong with 2019, but the business was very slow, and it was tough to be in the market in 2019. So that also kind of compounded. So, as I mentioned earlier, and as long as I have my job, my trucking job or trucking business, everything was working well. I'm fine. I could just take care of everything else. I could make sure we have the same lifestyle, and everything, all my other failed businesses, everything. It was kind of I could keep everything afloat. But once that 2019 hit, there was okay. Now there's another layer of stress that came into my life, and now I'm like, okay, cool. Now I got to stress about money too. So it was
Right.
that was too much. And at the time, my wife was pregnant in 2019. So there's three things going on at the same time. That's what I decided. Okay, my smooth transition plan is not gonna work. So now I need to like end it once and for all and just see what else I can do. And that is what I did for. That's what I did in 2020.
Okay, so it sounds maybe to the listeners, it sounds as simple as okay. So at this point, Khalid sells his truck to the first buyer that just came up immediately, and then he went to work at a major corporation as a coder. But I'm sure there's a lot more nuance with that. So was it easy? I'm sure it wasn't easy. How was it actually selling the truck, and how was it pivoting? Did you pivot to like full time learning, like maybe telling your wife, okay, I need to be in my office or something for 8 hours a day, really learning to make this work for us? What was that like? Or what was your mindset like during that time?
So my mindset was, at that time I managed to convince myself that I can, quit trucking, stay at home, learn to code in let's say 6 months to a year, maybe 2 years, and then get a job as a full-time software engineer. I was 100% convinced in that, even though my family wasn't.
Yeah.
But so that was in my mind. I believed I could do it. I wanted to do it. I went after it. But when it came to the trucking, the trailer was rental, returned it. The truck, I'm not gonna comment on that.
Okay.
Not gonna comment on that because that was one of the also again the mistakes that I made. Is too many things. So it was one of the mistakes that I also made, and so all I had to do was basically get rid of the truck and a trailer and stay at home. So that three steps were simple enough to do. So and that is what I did. So I
Okay.
think I think getting rid of the trucking was easier than than you would think because you don't have that many obligations. All you have to do is just make few calls, return the trailer, cancel your insurance, and maybe cancel other services that you use, and that's about it. So
Okay.
and you can have the truck parked there for 2 years as long as you're paying for the parking spot. No one is gonna say anything about it. So
Okay.
in that was that area was easy, and now I gotta deal with it. I gotta worry about about coding,
Yeah.
learning to code and go into this. So when it came to, being a self-taught, I didn't know anyone that did it
Okay.
personally. So basically, I was the only one in my whole family friend group that was trying to do this thing, this new thing that no one has done in our, in our small
Yeah.
circle. So yeah, that was challenging.
Yeah, I want to ask you. So, what gave you this confidence? Because I think you had mentioned where you knew that you could do it, quote unquote, from whatever it was, the 6 month to 2 years, something like that. You were sounds like you were confident you could do it. Where do you think you got that confidence from? Because I was terrified when I did it. I stayed in my last job for at least a year too long, if not. And I finally, maybe it was my wife getting pregnant and realizing it's now or never for me to burn those proverbial ships and do it. But what was that for you? How did you get that confidence?
Exactly what you just mentioned.
Hmm. Little one on
You
the
know,
way.
yep, a little one on the way, and the trucking stress, the lifestyle and all of that going on in the background. And now for the first, so I want you to imagine this. I was driving trucks going from one state to another, and let's say I deliver a load to Phoenix. I could take a few days off, just explore the city. I did the same with Atlanta, Georgia. I did the same with Dallas, Texas. I was kind of, would you okay, I'm not gonna say I'm a free spirit, but I was free.
Yeah.
I could be anywhere I want to. Imagine going from Minneapolis to San Diego, California, and not just taking an airplane. You're actually getting paid to go there.
Yeah.
So it was amazing. It came with its own perks, but the problem was, the downside was, now I have a kid coming up. Now I have a whole another human being that kind of depends on me. That is a very big responsibility that I do not take lightly. So I was like, okay, it is now before he gets here, or I'm not gonna have the chance,
Yeah.
or I'm not gonna have the chance. So it was that was one big reason of it, and the other reasons were basically the lifestyle, the stresses that I was dealing with,
Yeah.
being away from home, being on the road, on driving trucks. So I think that is, just as I said earlier, there are a few things that kind of built up through too many years, doing that. And now I have this, I know now I'm on a crossroads. I can either try to make it work in trucking that I've been doing for the last 5 years, but it didn't work out, or just get rid of all of that, stay home and try make something else work.
Yeah.
So basically, I didn't have anything else to do, nothing else to go back to, and unless except making it work and
Yeah.
becoming a developer.
Yeah. No, that's so interesting, man, because I hear so much of my story in what you just described, where I also picture myself at that crossroads where I could kind of look forward 5 years and then, in theory, look back and I guess I'd be successful. I was on a set path, but at the same time, just like you, I was going to be away from home maybe 70% of the time. And I would always be upset if I didn't at least try. And obviously, in hindsight, it's easy for me to say I'm so glad that I did, but I am confident, like even if LinkedIn didn't work out, I'm confident, like you, that I would have figured out a way to make things work. So I just, I find it amazing the parallels between our story with that. So when you mention, so now you're learning to code. I know you had mentioned, I think you had mentioned YouTube, you had mentioned Udemy, which I used as well. That was my first exposure to programming. You also mentioned you didn't have that blueprint. You didn't know anybody, nor did I, that had that proven path that would have been, I think, easy to pattern match. We didn't have that. So what worked well for you? How did you pick your courses? Did you just sample a bunch of things, learn a lot of new things, forget some, but maybe forget more than you learned, but still come ahead slowly? What was that process like for you?
Okay. That's a loaded question.
Yeah.
uh all right, so before I get into it, so I listened to, I've been listening to your podcast for a while, and I see the similarities, with so when there are kids involved, you definitely gain, you gain a clarity. Now now what is important, what is not, and now you know what you need to prioritize and what was just a sideshow in your life. Because a lot of the things that I thought was kind of, I was doing a lot. I was doing a lot of things that I thought I was doing something, but it wasn't. In hindsight, I was like, yeah, that was pointless.
Hmm.
That was just a waste of time. So it was a few. I gained clarity from that. So I'm really grateful for that. I went through that, and now I have a Now, never mind, never mind. I was gonna say, so with to address your question is I didn't really sample too many courses. What I did was basically, this goes back to when I mentioned earlier that I kind of brainwashed myself. I watched a lot of success stories, self-taught developers, and they're all, I watched too many of them, and I started to notice a pattern.
Mm.
All of them have the same pattern that I followed to get here, and I'm sure you did as well. And that, pick a course. I think I have a tweet that I always love to reshare, like five steps. First of all, what you want to do: pick a course, complete it, build a project, put together a resume, apply for jobs. So they all did that. They all did the same exact thing, but maybe definitely in different tech stacks, different variations of it. Everyone have their own life going on, so there's a slight variations to it. But at the end, at the end of the day, I think it all comes down to those 5 steps that I try to emulate, and yeah, I was successful at hindsight. I was I made it, but it wasn't a straight climb up. It was too
Yeah.
many things that I did wrong. That is why I'm on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram telling people, do this, stick to this, that you don't have to worry about that. Just try to show them, that, just trying to help them make it. And instead of wasting months of their lives, maybe years, doing things that are not really productive, or, that is not going to help them get to their end goal.
Yeah. I just want to point out, Khalid, that a lot of people consume content, but not a lot of people take the action that you took to actually reverse engineer the process. And I guess to an extent, I did that also, but I was also enrolled in a boot camp, which I guess they spelled it out for me basically. So yeah, maybe I'm not as smart as you, because I just think it's awesome that you were able to reverse engineer it like that. And you were just, it sounds like you were taking in all this information from all these different sources, and you're like, okay, I get that, I get that, I get that, I see all these similarities, I get the pattern, I'm going to do it, I'm going to make it happen. So in your story, was it as easy as that? You're going through that, you're learning your framework. Maybe it's Flutter, maybe it's Dart. I forget what it was at first. You build a project or a portfolio. You apply to jobs. Did you get an interview from the first job that you applied to?
No.
Okay. How did that go?
That is yeah, that was a straight answer, no. And also, so I picked at first I started, I started with Android because I always owned an Android phone. I always loved it. And as I said, I grew up with technology, and I always had an affinity, just mess around with the Android settings. I installed custom ROMs, and did modifications to the Android OS. I installed the Lineage OS. It's just too many things that was, they're all tech related, but not really tech related. So it's I viewed all of those as hobby projects, hobby things that I was doing on the side. But you don't know. But actually, they all came. They all ended up being helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that is that is a topic for another day. So right now, with that question, so I started with Android. I did that for about a Udemy course, or for Android development. 2 weeks, I struggled, stressed. I spent 2 weeks not learning anything. I was going through the course. I had no idea what I was doing.
Mm.
I was struggling with the IDE. I was struggling with with the language, Kotlin. I was struggling with running the app, just to make sure the app runs on my phone. I was struggling with I was dealing with conflicts on in different packages, different
Mm.
things. It was too much. I also struggled a lot with the concept of null.
Mm.
So you either declare a variable or it is null. So what is null? Now you can handle the null case. So it was so all of that, especially when you are starting out, especially in the early months, you will be introduced to so many complex, strange topics that you will need to learn, understand before you move on. But the thing is, they all come at once. So you're not going to be, okay, today we're going to learn about, no, now we're going to learn about declaring variables. Now we're going to learn about methods and functions. No, everything comes at once. Now you got to decouple and break down those into smaller concepts that you can grasp one by one until until you get to a point where, okay, now I know, now I know what it is about.
So is
But
that how
yeah, I
you
know.
is that how you worked through that? Is basically you were it sounds like you might have been frustrated at the time that you felt like you weren't learning anything. And what did you do there? Did you just like pause, zoom out and say, okay, these are the different areas where I'm not strong and I need to improve? How did you work through that? Because I know a lot of people might just give up there and maybe go back to driving the trucks. You didn't.
Yeah, about that, that was not an option.
I like it.
Yeah, that was not an option. Especially when I told everyone in my family, it was, yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna make it work. Now I'm
Mm.
gonna look like.
There's something there,
Now,
man. When you let
yeah,
other people know and you make that public announcement, there's that added accountability there. So there is something to that to those listening.
yeah. That actually is that is true. That is very very true. Maybe yeah. That's actually a great point.
Yeah.
So with that, as you said, I was frustrated, but I wasn't smart enough to know that, these are too many different concepts that I need to learn because this is my first time doing this. So I can't, I couldn't really tell that there were minor things, that I can learn. I can go look up null itself, learn it, then go back to declaring variables, different, primitive types and all of that. So it wasn't, I couldn't really, I couldn't really kind of break it down as like I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
But other time everything just came at once, and I was hard-headed enough to be like, okay, I'm just gonna bang my head against this until I make it work. So
Okay.
that was
So
the only option that I got.
you just kept going, and did you get some kind of an app coding along in that Udemy course that you were eventually halfway proud of? How did that play out?
No, actually I gave up on Android. So
Okay. Left Android and moved on to
Flutter.
okay.
So that is so I was, I was learning Android, struggling with it. Just, as I said, it was a mess. And then at the same time I was watching a lot, I was consuming a lot of YouTube content about, becoming a software at the same time. And I've seen a lot of the big tech influencers talk highly about Flutter. And I was like, okay, maybe these guys are onto something. Let me see what that is. And I watched the introduction videos. I watched some of the Google keynotes about about Flutter and all of that. And I kind of was like, okay, yeah, this is amazing. This is amazing. Sounds great. I'm gonna learn it. And I switched to Flutter, and I've loved it. Not gonna lie, loved it, especially when it comes to building the UI. The code was the Dart language. I think it is simple. It's not easy. It is simple. It is it's clean enough that you don't have to worry about, it's not verbose. So all of that kind of helped me. And you might think, at the time, actually, I did think that I wasted my time learning Android, but I didn't.
Yeah.
Now at least I know how to use the IDE, the Android Studio IDE, effectively.
Yep.
Now I can Google and solve conflicts, or if I had a different error, a random error comes up, now I know how to copy the error, put it on Google, copy a command, put it in the terminal, make it work.
Yeah.
So it was one of those things. That is when I noticed that everything that I was learning to this point was kind of compounding
Yep.
on top of each other. And I kind of, then I had Flutter go on. I haven't had major issues with it, but I really loved it, and here we are today.
Yeah, it's like we talked about before, Khalid, where anything that you did in the past, from driving the taxi to the Uber to the truck, there's so many translatable skills that we may not appreciate at the time. And going back to my own, when I was even back when I was playing video games, when I should have been going to class in college, and when I was working on boats, we learned things that, to your point, compound over time and help you troubleshoot later down the line. Now, moving on to Flutter, I'm not that familiar with Flutter. Maybe some of the listeners aren't as well. So if you just want to describe what is Flutter, how is it different than maybe the Android that you're working with, or Swift, or other languages like that?
So Flutter is basically a front end UI for building mobile apps. So it is a cross-platform. So it is similar to React Native. Basically, you write the code once, and from that to one single source code, you can build an Android app, an iOS app, a Mac desktop app, a website from it as well.
Nice.
So it is a cross-platform that you can build apps for. That is, I think that is the gist of it.
Yeah, no, very cool. And so how does that compare to if you know, like with Swift explicitly, I believe, is for Apple primarily. Is Flutter starting to kind of take market share from iOS developers, or is it like a different niche, sort of?
So it is a different niche. So when it comes to mobile apps, we have what is called, there is the native. So if you're building iOS apps, you can use a Swift and build a native app that runs natively on iOS. And you can also do the same with Android. You can use Kotlin to build a native Android phone. But the problem with that is, let's say right now, let's say you have a startup. Now you want to build Android on iOS apps. If you want to go native, you're gonna have to have one developer that is iOS developer and another one that is Android developer. And now you have to make sure that both apps are in parity when it comes to features. Both of them look the same, working the same.
Yeah.
So that is where cross-platform comes in. A cross-platform is basically, as I mentioned earlier, React Native, Flutter. You write the code once and it runs on both. It builds an Android app and an iPhone, an iOS app. And all you have to do is just basically now you have one developer that is building for both, instead of having two different developers or two different teams that do the exact same thing.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I can hear the passion in your voice when you describe Flutter. So that I find that very cool. And so how did you leverage Flutter and this passion for Flutter? How did you leverage that and transition into an actual job? Were you actively applying to jobs around this point in your learning?
So I started applying for jobs when I had 6 months of experience, and that was back in 2020.
Okay.
So once I got rid of the truck and everything, I sat down. I was learning to code 8 to 16 hours a day. All I was doing is just writing code, sleeping. I was dreaming of code. Not gonna lie, I woke up so many nights. Okay, I would wake up in the middle of the night. Okay, now I know why that wasn't working. Let me go fix it. So that is actually true. You might, I see a lot of TikTok influencers kind of make fun of that, but that is actually true.
Yeah.
Once you have that obsession for coding, once you start going at it, you will dream of code. You will dream of, actually, and also it gets disappointing at times. You would wake up in the middle of the night. Okay. Ooh, you would assume that you finished your job, but you would wake up, you're gonna realize that was a dream. Now you gotta redo it all over again.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's that. But I started applying for jobs when I had 6 months of experience. I put together, a resume. I had a small project that I was building at the time, and everything was kind of looking up. It was looking good. So I started applying for jobs at the 6 month mark.
Okay. And so what was that process like? Because I know some people, they apply to hundreds and hundreds. Sometimes they hear back. A lot of times they don't. Was that the approach that you took, or did you do something different?
That is exactly what I did, and yeah, now I'm having flashback. I was, I was doing good. I learned a lot. I knew a lot, about coding and about Flutter and about building mobile apps, but the market wasn't easy. It
Yeah.
wasn't easy. So I had to apply for. So for example, let's say I would say about every 20 job applications that I made, every 20 jobs that I applied to, I would only get maybe one interview request.
Okay.
So it was all I was doing is just basically, okay, let me code for 8 hours. Let me apply for jobs for 2 hours. That was kind of a daily thing.
Okay.
And I would go back and tweak my resume every other week, I think, just to make sure that the latest update that I made to my app was
It's
reflected
on
on my
there.
resume.
Yeah, make sure you got credit for that. Well, still, Khalid, I would challenge you a little bit because I would say a 5% response rate is still above average, especially from some of the people that I've talked to. So that sounds like you were maybe there was something with the application process you were doing well relative to the general mass of people. But regardless, when you actually got into those interviews, what was your first one like? Did you have any takeaways that you feel like the audience might be able to glean something from your experience, and or any horror stories? We love hearing about those as well, just to hear that you're mortal after all.
Yeah, actually, I have one for you. So, my first job. So I live in Minneapolis here. I live in a suburb of Minneapolis, but I was reached out by a recruiter. I passed my resume. Everything was going great, and I was scheduled to actually meet. Was scheduled to interview with the CEO of a startup, of a local startup. From here. And that turned out to be a scam. He turned out to be a scammer. He's now serving a jail for
Wow.
frauding investors. So
Okay.
that's a funny. Well, it's not funny. I'm sorry, man. It's not funny, but that's a horror story that I like to bring up. So that actually kind of gave me a lesson to just always investigate.
Yeah.
If you're applying for a job, just don't believe it,
Yeah.
because some of them might end up like that. But
Oh wait, can I ask you about that? Obviously, we're not going to reveal the company or the person who
mhm.
probably won't be listening anyway, but we won't go there. But so how did you what kind of due diligence did you do where you discovered this? Because it sounds like you didn't accept the job if they offered you one, and what was that like? What happened?
Well, okay. I was too excited to do any due diligence. So
Okay.
so
I get it. I'd be there too. I'd be like, "Oh, you want to give me a job? Okay. Worst case, I'll go somewhere else."
exactly. I was too excited to do any due diligence, and their website looked legit. Their LinkedIn profile looked legit. Their Twitter profiles looked legit. So I was like, okay, this is an actual thing. And I just I went for it. But I was supposed to, I didn't actually get the job because the CEO didn't show up for the interview.
Mm,
So kind of, yeah, I think we had to reschedule twice, and I also didn't figure out that he was a fraudster until I think about a year later on.
okay.
So somewhere down the line, because I have a list of all the companies that I applied for, and I like to periodically go back and look them up. So he showed up in one of those. I was like, okay, yeah, the guy's serving jail, and I figured found out about a year later. So
Interesting. Yeah, I hear all these systems that you have in place, which I find fascinating because some of these things, like keeping track of the past companies that you've applied to, that's a cool nugget of wisdom there that you do. So okay, so that one didn't work out. How did other ones go? And eventually, how did it go where you landed that first job?
with the first job, actually, a startup out of Houston, Texas, reached out to me. They needed a developer to basically just a mobile app developer to take over the project, publish, make sure the code looks good, and push the app to both the App Store and the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. And that is what I did. So it was kind of what it was equity based. There wasn't a salary to it, but I took that opportunity because for two reasons. The first one was, now I have something. Now I have an actual work experience on my resume,
Yep.
instead of having my trucking business on there.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is a good thing. And the second thing is, the COO of that startup, actually, he's a great guy, love him. uh, I would use him as a reference, for when I'm applying for other jobs. I will give him his phone number. The guy, he would talk me up.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, yeah, man, he's great. He's great. I love it. So I think that is one of those. So from the surface looking at it, it might look like, okay, why would I take a job that is not paying anything, and would still be working full time, even though everything was kind of supposed to be part time, but I had nothing else going on, and also learned from the code because the code was written by two senior developers, and it was handed to me. So there were a lot of things that I didn't understand from the code itself, because now the code is well structured, everything is insulated. There's too many things that was too many concepts that were new to me, even though I've been doing Flutter for a while, that I didn't realize until I went into until I took over a project that this good. But yeah, it was one of those things.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so you're a real live Flutter developer at this point. How is that the job that you work at today, or did you make a move therein?
So I'm still with them.
Okay.
I'm still I'm still working with that startup, but that is when everything kind of took off, because, as I said, now I have a real experience on my
Yeah.
resume. Now I have someone that can vouch for me,
Yeah.
someone that can say, well, yeah, this guy is great. He did this
Yeah.
and this and that. So that is when my Flutter career took off,
Yeah.
and it has been amazing ever since.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, I
Yeah.
want to point out one thing. From the time, from the moment that I decided to learn to code until I get this job, it was a year and a half of being basically unemployed,
Mhm.
being basically not doing anything except coding, writing code for building my app. updating my resume every other week, making sure it reflects the latest features on there, and also apply for jobs full time. Interview too many. I've been to lots of interviews. I've had so many rejection emails that I lost count. But by the time I got my job, my first job at the startup, I had applied for I think about almost 300 applications,
Wow.
300 applications at that point. So yeah, it was that tough.
Yeah. And so how dealing with all that rejection, Khalid, did you ever flinch? Did you ever think maybe, ever experience that imposter syndrome, or maybe you did and you kept going either way because I guess they're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I would be lying if I said no. Yeah, I would be lying if I said no. It was there was I remember a period of time there was so one thing I so let's not forget at the time we had a child, we had a kid. So now I'm going through this whole experience, having being responsible for another human being. So that also was weighing on me at the time.
Yeah.
It was weighing because that's a big responsibility, and and also being unemployed. Not making it, but I had my savings things to go to, to make it to not have to not have my family affected by whatever I was doing. So it is my responsibility to provide for them and everything. So I was trying to keep things separated, but there was a time it got to me. I was like, okay, you know what? I'm done. Closed my laptop. I went and applied for a local trucking company for two of them that I had prior experience with, because I did work with them in the past. So I went there, applied for a local trucking company, and one of them actually denied me. I don't know what's with that. I don't know what's with that. I thought I had yeah, I had a 5 years of experience, a clean record and everything, but maybe the economy, maybe something else was going on, and that is when it hit me. That's when it hit me. I'm like, okay, maybe I'm assuming that I have a trucking experience. I can drive trucks, clean clean record, clean driving record, and all of that. Maybe the job market is not as hot as I thought.
Mm.
Because now I got that slab, that reality hit.
Yeah.
But the other company took me in, applied, did the whole application and everything, and they were like, okay, when do you want to start? I told them I'm gonna think about it. So I spent 2 weeks just going through this whole circle,
Yeah.
trying to clear my head, trying to make, still, in my heart, I really wanted to pursue coding, really wanted to make it work. But at the same time, when it comes to reality, I'm like, okay, this isn't working out.
Yeah.
We're not even getting that many interviews, even though I'm spending what 2, 3 hours a day applying for hundreds of jobs.
Yeah.
It wasn't working out. So you could see, you could see I think that was my lowest point when it came to coding. So I spent 1 week, 2 weeks, going through this whole circle. And I decided to just, lay low and just take a few days off from coding,
Yep.
and then try to figure out. I did actually consult my some of my brothers, and they were like, if you want to do it, if you really want to do it, go for it. So
Yeah.
they kind of took me up with that. And yeah, some other family members also told me, you don't have, if you really want to do it, you can do it, go for it. And they
Yeah.
kind of give me that confidence boost, that motivation. So
Yeah.
sometimes that's all you need.
No,
Sometimes that's all you really need.
that's right. And it seems so simple, but just hearing someone else confirm that you can do something like that is sometimes all we need to push us forward to do that. And yeah, going back to where you had mentioned where the this one company, the truck company, rejected you, I feel like in a way that was probably a good thing, just because, like you said, it let you know, it was a signal to let you know the job market wasn't hot. And maybe if you translated that back to the developer applications you were doing, maybe it's not necessarily indicative of any skills that you lack, but just macroeconomic conditions. So I don't know if you made that connection there or not, but either way, I think it's again a testament to your character and the support network that you have around you to really continue to press forward and then to ultimately land that first role and then to keep segueing that or snowballing that into something bigger and better. And now I see you on Twitter and LinkedIn. You got thousands of followers, and you're I picture you, Khalid, as the Flutter guy. So I don't know what my word counts, but that's what I picture you. And I want to know. So now you're a real live Flutter developer. Do you have a typical day in the life of?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, man. Thank you. I do appreciate that. So yeah, being I try to be known as the Flutter developer, but I'm not really sure about that
Yeah.
anymore.
Well,
Yeah,
as far as I'm concerned, you are.
I'll take it. I'll take it. Thank you. Thank you. So right now, actually, so okay, to an earlier point, you mentioned earlier, I actually didn't make the connection that, the market not being hot in 2020, the lockdown and all of that. I didn't translate that into tech because I believe that the tech was kind of its own sector, isolated from the rest of from the rest of the economy. So I had that belief, but I didn't really make the connection.
Okay.
So so yeah, and for I'm sorry, what was the question again? The
Yeah.
day in
So
the life?
yeah, what's a day in the life of Mister Flutter?
So nothing actually. This is my spare bedroom. I woke up this morning, did my morning routine, sat here talking with you right now,
Yeah.
and I'll get to work soon, and that is about it. There's no really, I don't have a fancy 5 a.m. morning routine. It's just just I make sure that I work in the morning before the family gets up, and then see if I can do something else on the side if I got time. If not, I'll just go spend time with the family.
Yeah.
There isn't really much else to it.
Yeah, no, I love that. And so before we get into the what I like to call the hot seat questions, I'll ask you. So, are you fully remote in your job?
Yes, yes.
Nice. And so the it sounds like the work hours might be flexible. I know at LinkedIn, I'm so appreciative. They also have the flexible hours where basically as long as you're getting the work done, they're not monitoring how many hours in a row that you're sitting in front of your computer. So do you have a little bit of flexibility in that regard as well?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So I do have a flexible hours, as you mentioned, as long as I get the job done, in a reasonable time, they don't really care about anything else. And right now I'm working remote. And some people take this for granted, but again, this takes me back to my trucking lifestyle. I went from being on the road, in negative 20. So in Minneapolis, it gets negative 25 degrees in the winter time. It gets, yeah, we get feet of snow. So it is crazy. But this whole for the last 2 years actually, I was working from home. I haven't had to deal with any of that. So it is something that I will never take for granted. Working from home is an absolute it is the best thing that came out. It is amazing. So I will never take this for granted.
Yeah.
And for my job, yes, it is fully remote, and I really love it.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, man. And sometimes I forget how lucky I am and how lucky we are to work remote, and I'm glad that I have conversations like this to, I guess, to refocus me to appreciate the situation that we're in. Because like I used to be away from home in the extreme weather as well, and I guess it's just humans in general. I guess we get used to what we get used to, and in a way, it's good because we can adapt to pretty much anything. But yeah, I know with me anyway, sometimes we can lose sight of the appreciation that we should feel. So I appreciate you for reminding me that I need to appreciate my situation. So thank you for that.
You got it, man. You got it.
All right. You were up for a few hot seat questions?
Bring it on.
All right, let's do it. So I'm still going to ask you, even though you kind of already punted, what does your typical morning routine look like?
So right now I'm fasting, but in my morning routine, I would just wake up, clean up, do my morning routine, and get a black coffee. I make coffee at home. No Starbucks, nothing fancy. I make one at home. Get back here. This is my computer. This is my office, my little office, and get to work. That's really it.
Okay. No, I like it. All right. If money didn't exist, what do you think you would do every day with your time?
Uh, I think I would teach. I think I would mentor and teach.
Flutter or
No, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be coding related. It can be about let's say it can be about anything, to be honest. because I feel like I have that. Growing up, I would actually I used to help my siblings, with their math, science, school homework. So I think that is something I really love doing.
Yeah. Okay. No, I like that. Are there any books or podcasts that have had a really big influence on you?
Does YouTube do you YouTube videos work
It
count?
absolutely should count. I was thinking of that as I asked the question because I remember you mentioning that. But no, absolutely. Are there any channels or any content creators specifically that stand out above the rest?
Hmm. There is a guy called Dorian Develops. I
Okay.
think you might know of him.
No, I
Dorian
haven't, but I'm gonna
Develops.
check him out.
Yeah, he's amazing. I've been following his journey for ever since I can remember. He's an amazing guy. He's also a self-taught, so he's one of the his channel is one of the one of the early channels that I used to watch,
Okay.
and I do actually to this day. So it is amazing, and I think that is yeah. When it comes to tech, that is it. But there are lots of other videos from from different creators that I watch, but I would say most of them. I mean, that's a tough question to answer. Yeah, I think that is it.
Okay. All right. If you could send a single message to your former self to help you during this transition into tech, what do you think it would be? And we get in terms of like character limit, you could picture like a tweet. What do you think that message would be?
For my for my hmm. In 2020, I would tell myself, you can do it, you're gonna do it, just stick with it.
Yeah.
That is it. That's it.
Simple. Yeah. All right. Is there anything else, Khalid, that you're working on that you want to share? I know I see you pumping out content on Twitter. I'm not that big on Twitter, but whenever I do go on there, you're at the top of my feed, and I always enjoy reading your tweets. Anything else that you're working on?
Thank you, thank you. So right now, nothing else to be honest with you. So all I'm doing is making sure, uh, I do, as I mentioned earlier, also make short form videos, basically, TikTok and Instagram Reel, YouTube Shorts. So I'm trying to basically grow a following on those platforms, and also help and tell, show other people that it can be done, that it can be done, and try to give them some of the, you know, try to give them some of the knowledge that I wish I had received, when I was going through it.
Yeah. No, I like it. And please send me the links. I'd be happy to add your channels to the show notes so the audience can check you out. Is
Thank
there
you.
anything else that you wanted to talk about today that we didn't?
No, actually, no.
We covered it
But
all.
I do have a question for you.
Go for it.
So I do have a question for you. So how does it I think both of us, from we both have very similar backgrounds. So how do you can you give me a comparison between your current lifestyle and the one you had before, and what you're grateful for?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. And I guess in terms of lifestyle, are you talking about any area in specific or kind of all the above?
All of the above. I
Yeah,
think you can
simple.
let's say a day-to-day life.
Yeah, day to day life. I don't know if the answer you're looking for, but I'll think back to when I would wake up at 12 o'clock noon on a tugboat, where that was my I guess that was supposed to be like my 8 a.m. or whatever. And I'm just thinking back where, you wake up, you grab breakfast, and then you're on watch where I'd be, depending on what we're doing, I usually go up to the wheelhouse, get a radio, put my safety vest on and everything, see where we are, potentially have to go out and either climb up on a barge and help them tie up to the dredge that we're working with, or from painting to chipping to removing rust from the boat. So that was before. And to be honest, I never really had to work in the frigid weather. I was lucky to work down in Miami even during the winter. So the elements weren't usually at play aside from the rainstorms, which would come out of nowhere down there. But that was fun in its own way. But when I contrast that to, well, before let me finish that, at that point I didn't have a wife, may have had a girlfriend, not my current wife at the time, and kind of like you, I was more of a free spirit, confined to a boat. So it's not like I could go out and explore the town. Like I guess I could look down at the water and the sunrise and the sunsets were absolutely beautiful, especially down there in Miami. So that was then, and today I get to wake up and wake up at 5 a.m. But that's my choice. That's not the boss's choice, which is part of the fun, I guess. And I generally try to get a workout in, definitely get the coffee, and then I get to go wake up our daughter at 7 if she hasn't already woken me up well before 7, and I get to spend a little bit of time with her before I embark on the 15-second commute to the home office, which I'm sitting in now, which you can't beat the traffic there. And yeah, man, I'm just extremely fortunate and enjoying life. So I enjoyed before and I enjoy it now, and I definitely wouldn't change anything about before because I feel like it definitely gives me that perspective as well. So I don't know if that's what you were looking for when you asked me that, but that's what came to mind.
Exactly. That is exactly what I was looking for. So I was trying to see the contrast between the two lifestyles. So
Yeah.
it is amazing, man. It is amazing.
Yeah. No, I like it. I like that you turn the tables there on me. So, man, I appreciate you, Khalid. I appreciate everything you've done, the content you create, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. I'd love to have you back on in the future, and we can see how it's played out.
All right. Awesome, man. Awesome. Thanks a lot for having me. And it was a pleasure. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Pleasure was mine. Thanks for listening. If you got value from today's show, please consider leaving a 5-star rating and a review on Apple or Spotify. It's a free way you can support the show and help other people just like you find the story and others like it. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to follow the show on whatever podcast application you use. And most importantly, if you know someone that might be interested in breaking into tech, tell them about the show.